The Mix window. Go to the window menu and click on Mix. You'll notice that it's Command equal, or if you're on a PC, Control equal, and you get to the Mix window. The Mix window has various views: inserts, sends, input and output, and the fader. To change these views, go to the View menu, Mix window views, and for example, we can click on Inserts F to J. The maximum amount of inserts you can have in a channel are 10. 5 from A to E and 5 from F to J. You can also do the same with the sends. So I'm going to now open up sends F through J. So on a channel you can have 10 sends. Now if I hit Option or Alt and click on the header of each view, I can hide it. Let's look at the input and output. When you're mixing an audio track going into the mix bus, which is here, make sure the outputs are assigned to the mix bus, except tracks you don't want in a mix, or MIDI tracks that are going to external MIDI, or tracks that are sent to a subgroup. Now we're going to do a subgroup a little later. The subgroup would go to the mix, and the tracks would go to the subgroup. Well, as I say, we'll look at that a little later. On the input side, audio channels, basically the input is not activated because they're playing their output. On the input side, you need to pay attention to auxiliary inputs, instrument tracks, and audio tracks used for internal mixing. Now that's something else we're going to do in this module. So let's now take a closer look at the sends. I'm going to put some reverb on the drums. So the drums go from channel 10 through to channel 15. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 16 to the end, and here I'm going to hide them. So now on my channel here, my bass drum, I'm going to click on the left here and I can select a bus. I'm going to select bus 1 and 2, and now I have my fader here. I'm going to just shut that, and I'm going to put bus 1 and 2 on all the other tracks. And now if I hit Command and click at the top left, I have what's called single send view. Single send, you have a fader and you can only see one send per group of sends. Command and you click right at the top left here in the letter A, and you can go back to assignments view. Assignments view is where you have the 5 assignment slots in view. So now we have our reverb. I'm going to go back to single send. I'm going to select channel 15 and Shift Command N, create a stereo input track. Here we go, which I'm going to call reverb. And now in the top at the input, I'm going to assign bus 1 and 2. So now this bus here from all the dry drum signals is going to go into this channel here, the aux, and on the insert I'm going to insert a reverb called air reverb. And here's the air reverb, and in the factory default presets I'm going to find a basic small reverb or a drum room because we have drums. Okay, now I'm going to hide this window and I'm going to put the solo in solo safe. So Command on Mac or Control on PC and click on S. S grays out, the solo is grayed out, which means now if I select these solos, I'm now going to have just the drums, and I'm going to go to somewhere like measure 16 and play the track. Well, that sounds quite good. There's some drums. If I mute the return, it's dry. Very wet. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull down all the auxiliary sends so we can hear exactly what's going on. So let's start with the snare drum. If I hit Option or Alt, the fader will go to 0 dB. That's quite nice. And let's try with the overheads. That's nice. And with the bass drum? Bass drum's a bit muddy, so let's bring that right down. Snare bottom. We don't need too much of that. And see if we put some room on the reverb. Some reverb on the room. That brings it alive. Maybe just a bit too much. And now to finish, Command or Control, hit on A, go back to assignments. And take the solo out and have a listen to this in the track. Yeah, very nice. One last thing on the sends, bus 1 and 2 doesn't really tell us what's going on. So if I right click on this and rename, I'm going to rename this because it's a small room reverb, room reverb. There we go. And just so it's not confusing all these no input. So now we have this auxiliary send goes to this input of this auxiliary, which is called reverb, and the signal goes through the insert and then out into the mix. So now let's look at the inserts. So if you click up here on the left hand side, go into plugins, and we're going to insert an EQ3 7-band mono EQ on the kick drum. So here we are. This is basically an inline EQ. So the signal comes off the hard drive, goes through the EQ and then down the channel. So for example, this kick drum here, it's just a little soft, so maybe we could just take out a little bit of medium here, of low mids, and possibly give it a little help in the top end. There. Right, and out of solo. Just a little bit more level. There we go. If I was to take a stereo track, so let's look at this room here, you'll notice that you have multi-channel plugins and multi-mono plugins. So if you're using total stereo, as in this is a room, this is a stereo set of microphones, we could use a stereo plugin and maybe just cut the bass off on the overhead mics to maybe about 120. There we go, with possibly a smaller, lower slope there, 6 dB octave. Right, there we go, and don't know why that happened. There we go. Let's have a listen. Yeah, that sounds quite nice. Just before we leave the inserts, let's open this. I'll bring your attention to the bypass button, and here you have a preset, the factory library, and most of the presets have fairly good standard settings for different things you might want to do. So you should try them out. And the last button here is compare. So compare, if you make a change, you can then compare it to what it was.